A lot of men out there that think transformation looks like just highlight reels, the shredded before and after pictures, the motivational quotes that look at me now success stories. But no one shows you what it really takes to get there. Right? No one talks about that in between stage, the brutal, confusing, lonely space before the change actually happens. And that space is called the void. It's when your old self is dying, but your new self hasn't fully arrived yet. Right? You've outgrown your old habits, your old mindset, your old identity. But the man you're becoming, he's not fully built yet. He's not created yet. And see, in that space, it's so easy to feel lost, to feel confused, to feel like you're failing, and it's easy to question if you're actually doing the right thing, right? And things like, am I even on the right path? Why do I feel so stuck? Why isn't this shit working yet? Right? Listen, I've been there, right? And see that void? It's not failure, okay? It's necessary. It's part of your initiation. It's the sacred space where the transformation actually happens. Not on Instagram, not on TikTok, not on the stage, but right there in the quiet, uncertain, uncomfortable stretch between identities. And most men will get stuck, there in the void because they don't understand what it is. Right? But see the men who become great, who become unstoppable, they know and learn how to navigate the void consciously. In today's video, I'm going to show you why the void is one of the most important phases of your growth, how to survive it without losing yourself, and how to use it to create your next level identity. And at the end, I'll give you a step-by-step framework to concretize your new identity into your new reality. Right? Because I've been there, I've wore the t-shirt, right? Because when I started my transformation, after I had my spiritual awakening, after I'd created the visions, after I'd had the messages from the higher realms, I thought everything would just be rosy and click into place. I thought I would be unstoppable, aligned, empowered, clear, right? And it did feel that way until it didn't. And about 5 years into my awakening, I found myself stuck in this strange space once again, right? Not the man that I used to be, but not the man that I desire to be, right? Because old patterns didn't fit anymore, right? I couldn't take, fake small talk. I certainly couldn't numb out with drinking or distractions, okay? And I couldn't keep living the same ego-driven story. But see, the new way, that wasn't clear yet, right? And the purpose was in my heart, but again, it wasn't fully clear yet. It was still foggy, right? The actions, the routines, the identity of this awakened savage, I was still figuring all this shit out. And in that space, I doubted myself. I questioned whether this path was even real. I felt alone. I felt invisible, right? Like I was just floating through this void with no map. Okay. And it's another dark night of the soul, or what I call a lone wolf stage. Right? I'd been there before. I thought I was past it. But I knew that if I was in this place again, it was not a mistake. Right? There's no mistakes. Right? I knew it was a sacred space, a necessary part of this journey that I had to go through in order to activate or, step into my next version. Because, see, transformation is not a straight line. It's a death and rebirth. And the void is where the old you dies, where you shed the masks, the attachments, the false identities. It's uncomfortable as fuck, but it's also where the foundation for the real you is built. Right? But see, this time it happened to me, it was lasted a lot longer than the previous times. Right? I went into deep isolation, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what else to do. Everything that once made me feel inspired, aligned, it no longer did. So for a while, I was trying to force things, right? Letting old limiting beliefs, creep back in. You'll fail, if you're not working hard, you're failing, all that bullshit. Until I surrendered. I fully let go. And that was the most uncomfortable part because I was waking up not knowing what to do. How am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to be a role model? What am I going to do? So I done the only thing I knew what would work, right? I isolated, I meditated, because deep down I knew that this was where I would get the answers, right? I knew there was things that I had to release or I wouldn't be going through this, right? Realizations I had to face, downloads I had to receive. And it was in that place, that cocoon, that things started to become a little bit clearer, right? Because I could see that I was still playing small. I was still aiming for what I thought was possible, not what I truly desired, not what my heart desired. See, my dream has always to been impact millions of lives. And YouTube has always been the vehicle I envisioned doing it on. But see, for the longest time, I didn't believe that I could do it. I didn't believe it was possible for me to do it. Right? I thought I would run out of ideas. I thought nobody would listen to me. I thought I didn't have what it takes. Until I got a message as clear as day, right? Your life experience is what qualifies you to help others, right? And in that moment, something just switched in my head. Because yes, I've got all the coaching qualifications you could think of. Personal trainer level 1, 2, 3, nutritionist, life coach, spiritual coach, magnetic mind coach, a degree in human services and psychology. You name it, I've got it. But that's not what makes me qualified. What makes me qualified is my lived experience, because that sets me apart, right? I've lived through chaos. I pulled myself out of the fucking shitter, out of hell, and I've transformed into a man who I admire, who I am proud of. And I'm no guru, right? I'm no mystic. I'm just a regular guy who once felt hopeless, broken, consumed by addiction and depression, right? And I've been taken to the absolute lowest point a man could go, wearing adult nappies, diapers as a 28-year-old, never thinking I could have sex or a family ever again. But guess what? That could have broke me, but it didn't, because I never, ever, ever quit. I fought my way back. And I'm living proof that if you never quit, you can do whatever you want. If I can do it, then so can anyone. Right? But see, the void is part of the process. But the big question is, will you consciously navigate the void, or will you let it consume you and take you back to old patterns, old habits? Because the choice will define the man that you become. Right? Because if you look over all of the spiritual traditions, they speak of the void, right? Buddhism call it the sunyata, right? The emptiness that holds infinite potential. In Christianity, right, they called it the wilderness, where prophets are tested before their mission. Right? In alchemy, it's called the negredo, the blackening, the death of the false self before the rebirth. Right? Because transformation requires a death. The void is not a mistake. It's where the old version of you dissolves, and that creates space for the new, real you to emerge. But what happens is, most men run from this space, right? Because it's difficult, because they feel tension, right? They numb, they distract, they label it depression or failure. But see, the superior man, he understands the void is the womb of the rebirth. If you can hold yourself in that emptiness without running, you will emerge as a man who's built on truth, not from ego. Right? And if you look at what the Stoics said about it, right? They had they said, amor fati, love your fate. They didn't romanticize struggle, but they embraced it because it was necessary. Right? And Marcus Aurelius, he's an impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I've used this quote so many times because it's so pertinent to everything that I do. The void is the impediment, but it's also the way. And when you stop fighting it and you lean into it with presence, that's when the shift will happen. Stoicism teaches us that virtue is forged in adversity. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's actually your training ground. You are not here to escape discomfort. You're here to master it within yourself. right? And psychologically, what it's called identity dissonance, right? Our neural pathways, our beliefs, our patterns, they are breaking down, but new ones haven't solidified yet, right? And there was Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett. She calls it the affective limbo, right? And it's a space where your brain no longer predicts the world in the way it used to. So this is why you feel lost, uncertain, disconnected, because it's like the GPS hasn't been updated. Your old maps don't work anymore, right? And this dissonance is essential for neuroplasticity. It forces your brain to start creating new connections, new patterns, new ways of being. And without this uncomfortable gap, you stay trapped in old cycles and repeating them, right? So your brain, as I've said, is wired for familiarity. It craves predictability because predictability feels safe. And when you step into the unknown, your subconscious starts having a shit fest, man. It's panics. Your old beliefs, coping mechanisms, and your ego structures, they're just fighting to stay alive. Right? And this is what Joe Dispenza calls the breakdown before the breakthrough. And this phase feels like you're stuck, but you're actually in neuroplasticity in action. New neural pathways are being formed. Old survival patterns are being pruned. And most people shit the bed and they retreat. Okay, they interpret this discomfort as I'm failing, but they're fucking not. Okay, because it's not a failure, it's just a neurological restructuring. Right? The void is your brain going through its synaptic pruning. Right? Old neural connections based on an outdated identity, they are being pruned, dismantled. And at the same time, new ones are being formed. It's like clearing the weeds before planting a new garden. And this is why clarity feels distant at first, right? And every time you sit with discomfort, every time you resist the urge to escape into old habits, you then strengthen these new neural pathways of your new identity. Okay, and it's, as Dr. Andrew Huberman says, the brain changes through focused, deliberate effort, followed by periods of rest and reflection. So the void is that period of reflection. You know, in fact, Navy SEALs undergo stress inoculation training, right? Deliberately putting themselves into chaotic, uncertain environments, not to break them, but to expand their capacity to remain calm under pressure. And the void is your version of that. You're being recalibrated for a bigger life. Okay, and I always talk about the spiritual aspect, the stoic aspect, the psychological, the scientific, so you can see it from different angles, but they all corroborate each other. The void is not a setback, it's where you're being forged. It's not where you're failing, it's where you're forming. And this is the thing, will you face it as a boy running from discomfort or as a warrior standing in the fire until he becomes steel? Because the void is where boys die and men are born. Right? You can't take your old identity into a new life. That version of you, the one built on survival, validation, ego, fear, he has to go. Right? Not with violence, but with surrender. This is why the void feels so brutal. It's the funeral of who you thought you were, but it's also the birthplace of who you're becoming. Right? The key to navigate this isn't more doing, it's more being. Being willing to sit in the uncertainty, being willing to feel the discomfort, being willing to stand in front of the mirror and admit, I don't know who the fuck I am yet, but I'm no longer that guy I was. Right? Because see, that honesty, that is powerful. Because it's from that space you can consciously choose your next identity. Because most people let circumstances define who they are. You're not here for that shit. You're here to design your identity consciously. Right? Because see your old mindset, I'm lost, I don't know who I am. No, you get rid of that shit. You're adopting the superior mindset. I'm in a sacred space of becoming. Right? I now choose who I will be. Because when you realize this void is actually a blank canvas, everything changes because you're the creator. You are the magician. Right? You move from reacting to life to creating life, seeking validation to self-authorization, right? Fearing the unknown to embracing it as your playground. Right? You're crafting that awakened, savaged identity. Right? If you make it practical, ask yourself, what qualities does the man I'm becoming embody? Right? Does he calm under pressure? Disciplined even when he's unmotivated? Compassionate but, you know, unwavering? Focused on legacy, not likes? And what principles are guiding his decisions? Honor, integrity, service, courage, honesty, presence. What does his daily standard look like? How does he train his body? How does he guard his mind? How does he cultivate his mind? How does he lead his family? How does he create value in the world? Right? You're not trying to find yourself. You're forging yourself. And this identity is not built by accident. It's built through deliberate focus and aligned action. The void is giving you the gift of space. Space to shed what's false and space to build what's real. So don't waste it. Okay? Because a man's true power begins the moment he chooses who he will become. Right? No longer dictated by his past, but defined by his present intention. Right? So let's look at a very powerful step-by-step framework, because you want to navigate this void, right? You want to become the man you were born to be. So let's, put this into action. Okay, so the first step is you need to accept the death of the old identity, right? So you need to bury the man you were, not with guilt, not with shame, but with gratitude. And this is a very, very powerful practice. The first time I done this, I cried. Right, take 20 minutes in solitude and write a thank you and a goodbye letter to your old self. Right? Thank him for all that he's done for you. Thank him for how he kept you safe. Acknowledge how he helped you survive. Be super grateful because he is the reason you are here right now. He has overcome all the obstacles in your life. He has helped you get through every stage of your life up until now. So it's time to express deep gratitude. Okay, so, acknowledge him, but then clearly say, I now release you. You no longer lead me. Okay, and burn that letter. Let it go. Right? Because you cannot create from a graveyard. You let the old you rest. Step 2, define your code of the awakened savage identity. Right, I've done an in-depth video on this recently. I'll put a link in the description. But your new self, right, needs structure. An honor code that governs how you think, act, and respond. Right, so write down your 5 non-negotiable principles that your future self lives by. Right, I do what's right, not what's easy. I respond, I don't react. I honour my word above all. Right, whatever it is, your personal code. Okay, and revisit that every single day until it becomes so ingrained that you've memorised it. It's your second nature. Right, because men without a code, they drift. Men with code, they dominate their lives. Okay, step number 3, craft your North Star vision. Okay, now I've also done an in-depth video on this recently. I'll put a link for that video in the description. Right, but to cross the void, you need a lighthouse. Okay, that's your vision, something that you're working towards. Right, so just journal that. Right, your highest life vision. Where are you? Who are you leading? What are you building? What legacy are you leaving? Right, write down a statement, a vision statement. Okay, and what I would suggest is watch the video, because the other video goes deep into it, and I do believe that's a process. If you want to really have a successful life built on a code and a vision, then watch the 2 videos in the description. Okay, step number 4, you install daily warrior rituals, right? 5 at minimum, 5 non-negotiable, right? Because your identity isn't built in big moments, it's built in daily reps. Right, so have 5 non-negotiable, okay? One which is going to be centered around the body, okay? Physical training, building the body, right? One is going to be centered around the mind, being present, okay? Whether it be meditation, breath work, okay? One's going to be centered around focus creation, vision aligned work, right? One's going to be around the family, okay? Relationships, right? So, there's going to be at least 5, right? The way I have it is fitness, family, fulfillment, finances, and then reflection, okay? Which means that you can course correct. Okay, these should be your anchor points, and there should be no negotiating with these. Okay, because discipline isn't restriction, it's actually freedom. Right? And step number 5, weekly reflection and recommit ritual. Right? So this is again, growth isn't automatic, it's intentional recalibration. So every week, on a Sunday, I recommend just block off 30 minutes. Ask yourself, where did I live as my new identity this week? Right? Where did I let old patterns creep in? What will I do differently next week so I make sure that I stay aligned? Right? Make up your own reflection ritual, right? But just so you're going back and measuring and reflecting to see where you've went off track and how to recalibrate. Okay, so adjust, recommit, refocus, and get going. Because a man who reflects weekly evolves relentlessly. Okay, and step number 6, a community, a brotherhood, right? Because throughout the history of ancient cultures, they've always had, brotherhoods. Okay, because no warrior thrives in isolation. You need brothers who hold you accountable to your highest standard, right? Find a group who are walking the same path or create your own group, right? Share your vision, share your code, check in weekly, help each other out, keep the blade sharp because lone wolves, they will die in the wilderness, right? Tribesmen, they will thrive. Okay, so this is the thing, right? Your battle plan isn't motivation, it should be a way of life. Most men drift because they're waiting to feel ready. Warriors move before they feel ready because they're chosen who they are. And in that void, you do not find yourself, you create yourself. Right? And every single step that I've gave above, that's how you do it. Okay? And I'll make it pretty simple. The void you're in right now, that uncomfortable space between who you were and who you're becoming. Right? Yeah, it's hard. It's not punishment. It's not a setback. It's needed. It's necessary. It's initiation. Every man who ever walked the warrior's path has had to face it. The space where the old identity dies, but the new one isn't fully born yet. Most men will run from it. They will numb it. They'll distract themselves. Or they'll fall back into their comfort zone of the old self and keep repeating the same shit as the past. But not you. You're not most men. You're here because you're ready to create that new identity. One that's built on choice, not circumstances. One that's aligned with a vision, not reaction. One that makes you proud to look in that mirror and say, I am who I fucking am. Okay, this is your rite of passage. Not through force, but through awareness, discipline, and aligned action. Right? You don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. You just have to take the next obvious step every single time you get the opportunity to take it. Okay, so here's what I ask you to do. Just declare it and type in the comments, I choose to become the man I was born to be. Right, not for me, for you. You're the man creating it. I'm not. I'm just a messenger. Okay, subscribe and join this brotherhood. Right, hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, give me a wee like. Right, this is not just a YouTube channel. This is a brotherhood for modern day warriors. Every single video, I come here with my intention to provide value to you. Because see, when I'm providing value to you, I'm providing value to myself. Because you know what? I'm still on this journey. I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning. I'm still walking this path. I'm still sharpening my blade. Okay, and I want to do it with you. Right? And last but not least, share this with someone who you think is struggling, someone who might be stuck in that void. Don't let him drift alone. Right? Give him something to reignite that fire. Right? The man that you were is gone. The man you're becoming right now is in your hands. Stop waiting, stop doubting, start creating. Okay, the awakened savage isn't born by accident. He is created in the void. And brother, your time is right now. Okay, let's get after it. Let's do it. And as always, I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you for watching. I'll have another video here and you can subscribe here. Take care. I'll catch you on the next one.